Hi guys, how are you today? Welcome back to my channel Adventures in America. If you are new to my channel, my name is Jocelyn and I'm a dual citizen of the United States and the Philippines. If you are not familiar with my channel, I am providing useful information regarding travel restrictions here in the US and also in the Philippines. I'm also documenting my life here in the US for those interested in migrating here in the US, and also I will be expanding my videos by including more information about the Philippines where I was born. Before we get started, please like this video, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome new subscribers. Let's get started. For those of you who are planning to travel in the Philippines, there are so many updates from the Philippine government by implementing new quarantine rules, new travel restrictions, and new guidelines for domestic travel. So let's get started. Let's talk about first if the Philippines is open for international tourism or foreign tourists. Unfortunately, the answer is no. As of July 5 of this year, the Philippines has not yet opened for international tourism. If you know the rules before, foreign tourists were allowed a 30-day visa-free stay in the Philippines, but that rule has been suspended since March 2020 and it has not been lifted as of this time. So for those of you who are fully vaccinated and you are a foreign tourist, unfortunately the Philippines is not yet open for foreign tourists. In addition, Philippines is currently imposing a travel ban against these 7 countries until July 15th. The 7 countries are India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Oman, and United Arab Emirates. So if you're a passenger coming from this list of banned countries, you will be denied entry in the Philippines. The exceptions are those Filipinos under repatriation efforts. Those Filipinos under the repatriation efforts of the government will be subjected to a 14-day mandatory strict quarantine. The first 10 days will be spent in a hotel or an accredited hotel by the Department of Health or Tourism. Now let's talk about the eligible passengers as of July 5. First, Filipinos. Filipinos have the right to travel. Second, dual citizens. Dual citizens can travel in the Philippines provided they present documents such as either a foreign passport plus dual citizenship documents if they don't have a Philippine passport. Also, former Filipinos can travel in the Philippines either alone or with their spouse or children. These former Filipinos will also be subjected to immigration requirements such as the presentation of a foreign passport plus an old or valid Philippine passport, or if it is not available, a PSA birth certificate. Now, let's go about the foreign nationals allowed to enter in the Philippines. Foreign nationals who have valid and existing visas have specific requirements. Also, there are foreign nationals allowed, such as those having immediate family members, such as a spouse or a child. Now, these foreign spouses, there are 2 requirements governing foreign spouses. If a foreign spouse is traveling with a Filipino wife, then that foreign national may be able to avail of the balikbayan visa at the port of entry or when arriving in the Philippines. The balikbayan visa is free and it will allow you to travel in the Philippines and stay there for 1 year visa free. Now, there's also another instance of a foreign national such as a foreign parent. The foreign parent must secure an entry visa and entry exemption documents regardless of whether they are traveling with their child, with their Filipino child or not. That is the rule. Also, if you are a foreign spouse, if you are not traveling with your Filipino spouse, you will be required to present an entry exemption document and an entry visa if the Filipino wife or spouse is in the Philippines. So remember, if you are a foreign spouse and if you are not traveling with your Filipino spouse, you always need an entry visa and an entry exemption document from the Department of Foreign Affairs or National Task Force Against COVID. So these are only the eligible passengers in the Philippines. Foreign tourists, even if you are fully vaccinated abroad, are not yet allowed to enter in the Philippines. Now, let's move on to the quarantine requirements because this is more complicated, or there are more rules for quarantine of different types of passengers. Now, these are the rules for quarantine requirements. The rule is that if you are an eligible passenger, you will have to undergo 14 days of quarantine. Now, there are rules for 10 days of pre-booked hotel quarantine and 7 days of pre-booked hotel quarantine. Now, who will go to the longer quarantine requirements? First, if you are unvaccinated, whether in the Philippines or abroad, you will have to undergo the 10 days mandatory hotel quarantine. Second, if you are vaccinated outside the Philippines and if you are not coming from a green lane country or countries included in the green list, you will have to undergo 10 days of mandatory hotel quarantine. Who will undergo the 7 days or the shortened hotel quarantine? First, those who are vaccinated in the Philippines. These eligible passengers must present a vaccine card before departure and also verification of vaccine card upon arrival. And you also must provide a certificate of vaccination from the Department of Information and Communications Technology or from the city health officer of the LGU or local government unit where the last dose of your vaccination took place. So there are two requirements for those fully vaccinated in the Philippines for 7 days of hotel quarantine. Now, there are a second set of passengers allowed to quarantine for only 7 days. And these are passengers fully vaccinated outside the Philippines. The requirements are, first, you must present a vaccination certificate from the Philippine Overseas Employment Labor Office abroad, and also, if applicable, an international vaccine card. And the countries included in the green list are provided by the government specifically. And here are the list of countries. Now, for those fully vaccinated in the Philippines, you don't need a test when you arrive, only when you are symptomatic within the first 7 days. Also, for those fully vaccinated outside the Philippines and the country is included in the green list, you will still be tested on the 5th day of your arrival. Now, the Philippine government defined who are fully vaccinated. There must be a lapse of 2 weeks after the second dose, or there must be a lapse of 2 weeks after the first and only dose if there's only one vaccine requirement. Now, for those of you who wanted to know which vaccines are allowed, the vaccines allowed are those authorized by the Philippine Food and Drug Administration, or those included in the compassionate special permit of the Philippine government, or those authorized vaccines for emergency use as defined or as provided by the World Health Organization. Now, let's talk about the 4 ports of entry in the Philippines. There are 4 ports of entry. First, Manila. Second, Cebu. Third, Clark. And fourth, Lawag City. Now, let's talk about the cost of the COVID test. First, in Manila, it is now 3,500 pesos starting July 1st. Previously, it was 4,000 pesos. And for Cebu, the fee is 0 for Filipinos. There is a free COVID test upon arrival in Cebu for Filipinos. But for non-Filipinos, the cost is 901 pesos. Now, for Clark, the cost is 3,500 pesos. And also in Lawag City, the cost is 3,500 pesos. The number 1 requirement is that your passport must be valid for at least 6 months, especially for non-Filipinos or foreign nationals. Number 2, you must have a pre-booked hotel quarantine either for 10 days for those unvaccinated or vaccinated outside the Philippines, not included in the green countries, or a pre-booked hotel for 7 days if you are vaccinated in the Philippines, and for those vaccinated outside the Philippines coming from the green lane countries. Another requirement, the registration or submission of electronic case investigation form 3 to 5 days before flying or before boarding. There is a separate ECIF for PAL passengers or Philippine Airline passengers, and also there's a separate ECIF for foreign airline passengers. This ECIF is for COVID testing registration. If you are flying through a different airline that is not PAL, you needed to register through the padlab.ph. I'm going to send the links below for the ECIF for PAL and also for other foreign airline passengers. Another requirement is that you needed to register for the Trace app mobile application for contact tracing. Also, before you fly, make sure that you have a face mask and a face shield. So these are all the important documents or requirements before flying to the Philippines. All the other documents such as affidavit of undertaking or health and declaration form or arrival card will be given to you upon boarding the plane. For those undergoing the 10 days mandatory hotel quarantine, the test will be conducted on the 7th day, and then the release of results will be on the 9th day, and then you can proceed to be released from the quarantine hotel on the 10th day. If you test negative, you can proceed to go home and complete the 4 days of remaining quarantine requirement. If you test positive, you will be subjected to further medical management or be admitted at a hospital. Now, for those of you who can avail of the 7 days of shortened quarantine, for those vaccinated in the Philippines, no test is required unless you are symptomatic. Now, for those under the 7 days quarantine coming from the green lane countries, the RT-PCR test will be conducted on the 5th day, and then the results will be on the 7th day. And now you can proceed to go home. Now, there is a relaxed protocol for domestic travelers under the latest resolution number 124. Fully vaccinated individuals need not present a test result to travel. They only need to present a vaccination card or a certificate of quarantine. And this applies to interzonal or intrazonal movement. Intrazonal is within the same community quarantine levels if you're traveling in the same area. Now, this relaxed health protocol is also applicable for senior citizens. However, there are also other rules under this latest resolution for domestic travel. IATF Resolution number 124B also stated that in situations when fully vaccinated individuals are close contacts of probable and confirmed COVID-19 cases, they may undergo a shortened 7-day quarantine period only if they remain asymptomatic for the duration of the 7-day period. So I'm just only talking about the domestic travel. In case there is a need for RT-PCR testing, this may be done not earlier than the 5th day after the date of the last exposure. For close contacts who may have been traced beyond the 7th day from the last exposure and who remained asymptomatic, no testing and quarantine shall be required. Once the RT-PCR test yields a positive result or the individual becomes symptomatic, prescribed testing and isolation protocols shall be followed. If you have any other questions or comments, please post them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can, and let me know your thoughts about these new travel health protocols. Also, if you haven't liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome new subscribers. Also, if you recently traveled in the Philippines, please share your travel experience and let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. I hope everyone is staying safe and have a great day.